Hey, so today I've got the Polyend Tracker Plus with me, but really this one's for the Tracker Friends, the Play Plus as well as the Tracker Mini, because we're diving into the synth engines on this machine. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the Acid Synth, which is a very squelchy machine. If you like your 303s or acid music, it's definitely the one for you. It's a mono machine, or it can be polyphony, and it's got a few variables in there to make it really a simplistic acid box, but it's got a few extra variables in there to really tone out the sound that you can get with it. So today I wanted to go through each of the variables so you have an understanding how it all ties together and how you can manipulate using macros to really expand out the sound, and just being able to have something like this on a Polyend Tracker or some sort of interface, really handy to get into that sort of acid, techno, all that sort of stuff. So in the end, stop talking about it, get straight into it. Alright, we're here with the Polyend Tracker, and today we are looking at a golden little box, the 303 or an acid synth, which you can find right here. And really, it's got a nice little simple oscillation section, a very squelchy filter with some nice envelopes and some ways we can manipulate the sounds, and we can get some really nice acid sounds with this little synth. So instead of talking about it, let's have a look through the sounds themselves and see how they go. So I'm just going to hit low patch. So as you can hear, there's a wide variety of sounds that we can hit with this little machine. So let's go under the hood and actually have a look at how this one's working. Now, the reason why I chose the Polyend Tracker over the Play or the Tracker Mini, it's got a nice little interface here. You can see me navigate around with this little button grid here. I can use the up and down arrow keys to jump around, and also use the scroll wheel to change the variable. And we've got a little keyboard as well. So I'm just going to initialize the patch. So we got a super little sound right there. And first off, because it is a subtractive synthesis, that's where we take an oscillator, pass it through a filter to scoop out some of the audio that we don't want, and then having an envelope to control the levels of audio, so the volume that's coming out. Let's start with the oscillator section. And as you can see, it clearly states the different saws that we have. So right away, you can hear a saw mix. So if I turn that off, you'll get nothing. So you're mixing the audios together. So we got a square wave. Now with the square wave, we do have a bit of pulse width, which we can drive with an LFO. Just when it reaches the end, you're not going to hear anything because it goes to nothing. If we were to go up here and add the submix, we're blending in an octave below, and we do have a few controls there. So if we go to sub mode, we've got a few different ways. So we could add the octave 1 or 2 below with a square, a pulse, or a triangle wave. So triangle wave being the softest, making it more fat and subby. We do have access to a noise as well. So it can make a little bit of nice things when the filter resonant hits it. So we have a few invisible hands that we can help control the sound. So these are directed from the envelope and the LFO that lives here, but we'll just stick to here now, because what we're doing is we're saying how much we're applying to the sound. So if we scroll up, say add some pitch LFO, so it sounds a little wonky. Next we have a pulse width modulation using the envelope. So it makes those sort of pulse width modulation things sounds really good. And then we have one that's based on the LFO. So this one, we have a little bit more control there. So they're just modulation options that we have access to. I'm just going to keep it with this sound because we're going to move into the next section, which is the filter, which is really where a lot of the acid sound comes from, because we got a really nice squelchy resonance and cutoff. So if I play with cutoff, this is how we sculpt our sound. If I just take away this one, we'll talk about that in a sec. As you can see, as you scroll up and down, it's more of that high end that's being removed, so we're letting the low pass through, and this is where it gets its sound. We have like a really squelchy filter. So just using those, we can get a lot of that squelch, but there's a few different models in here that we can use to sculpt our sound too. So they have different options that allow us to play with it. And then we have some invisible hands here as well that we can control the sound. So this is the envelope amount, so the amp envelope being directed into the filter. So this is where we get some of that squelch as well. Next we have note tracking. So if you have an idea, the higher the note, the more of that high end it's going to try and keep. Same with low end, it's going to try and get rid of more of that high end because we don't need it. So it keeps it balanced. And then we have a LFO amount applied to the filters. So we can get some more of those wobble acid bass lines. So really interesting stuff there. But next we'll go into the amp envelope. So this is controlling the volume of our synth, so how it's coming in and coming out. Now if you haven't dealt with an ADSR before, you have the attack that comes into 100% of the sound. We have the decay that comes in, so it could be like flat straight up, so it's like bang, the sound comes in. We could slope it out a bit, but that decay will always come down to a sustain level, and we can sort of adjust where that position is. So if I say scroll that up to like 50%, now I have a bit more control of how that sound's coming through. And then the release is like after I let go of that key, how much it's staying back. So if I just tap it, you can hear a little bit. You can hear it sort of fade out over time. So it's just a nice way to be able to control the volume. Next we have the modulation section. So this is where they've hidden a few other of those really nice features, but we have another envelope here which is controlling the LFO. So we have a frequency, so this is how many times it will cycle per hertz. We have different envelope types, so it could be a wiggly line, it could be a triangle, so a triangle wave, you have a ramp up and ramp down, which are two different saw waves, so it gives like a bit of a ramp in, which is really interesting. You have a square wave, which is just like on and off, and then sample and hold, which will create random variables in between, and they're really handy to like mess around with the actual sound. So lucky last, we have a few other voice settings. So this is dealing with glide. So if you haven't dealt with glide, it's how the pitch will bend between notes. So right now it's set to 0. So it's instantly jumping up. But if I just give that a bit of glide, say something like that, you can hear how that pitch is causing it to bend in, and we got the control of how quickly they'll come in and out. So a shorter time will make it come in a lot faster. And we do have a few different ways that they can do that. So go through there, give it a bit of a test out, as well as we do have a way to control the volume in this section. So that's pretty much the synth engine by itself, and it's quite small, but you can get a lot out of it just with playing with those invisible hands. But that's where this next part comes in, which are macros, which gives us a little bit more direct control from the tracker into the synth engine and really bump out that sound, because really we only got 3 synth slots that we can work with, but we do have a variety of modulation options. So if I just jump in here, you can see that we've got 6 different macros that we can apply. They're all nicely named in that, and just gives us a way to be able to control our sound. So as you can see, it might look a bit intimidating, but if I just come up to the top and hit edit, this is how we can change the name in those macro options, so it keeps all nice and neat. Next we choose if it's bipolar or unipolar. So if it's on, it'll put the line at the start so we can add and take away from the sound. If it's off, it's going to be just from the bottom and going straight up. You have parameters, so that's why I sort of explained the synth engine first, because then you'll have an idea of what all these variables are. And then we apply an amount. So it's like this is a multiplication. So you set the variable and you say times it by that many, and it'll get to that point there. And if we go a little bit more or a little bit less, like we can go up to like 2, I think it is. Yep. So we have a lot of control to be able to make our sound, and if you come down here and need to add extra ones, you can, and it'll put a new one in. You get 5 of them, and we do have 6 of these different macros that we can work with. So quite a lot of modulation options that we can use to manipulate our sound. And if you do them well, you're going to open up the sound palette, because you can apply tracker effects to control those macros. So it's really handy to broaden out that sound when you only have 3 synths to work with. And lastly, coming back to the main page, full circle, like it is usually a 303 as a mono machine, so it plays one note at a time. So usually I just leave the polyphony as 1 for this one, leaving room for like the other synths, so wavetable, FM, and the VAT, because they're more poly synths, giving them more room to shine. But you can give it more polyphony if you want to. It just creates unique, interesting things. And like if you pair it with a really nice sequence, like you're going to have a lot of fun. Like I've got some drums over on the corner here as well. Next we have our gain. So like we had the volume control inside, this is how we can give it a bit of a slight adjustment if it's being a little bit too loud or abrupt, or if we need to boost it. We have panning, so if we want to send it left or right, we can do it there. And lastly, we have 2 effects here that are really handy, a reverb and delay. So I just create a dry little delay, but if we bring stuff in, just adds a lot of atmosphere to our sound. And really, like, you get those more muted acid sounds. Like there's not really a drive, but you can apply these effects, so you can render out this line as a sample and then use some of the bit crush and distortion inside the tracker as well to get some more of those distorted sounds. But really it's got a very wide solid palette that we can play with straight away and really get into those acid sounds, so I'm very happy about that. So I hope you got some from this one, because the acid sound is just one of those iconic sounds that you really need the machine to be able to get. And with the Polyend Tracker or the Tracker Friends, you can get it on there and have a go. And like I said, I do like setting it to 1 polyphony, just treating it like a mono box, so I can create some really squelchy bass lines or some interesting melodies with the glide feature, and just having it play on the Polyend Tracker, because then it opens up the VAT, so the virtual analog synth, that can take more polyphony. Or you could have it with the drum machine. And seriously, you have the drum machine, you have the acid synth, you're going to have a good time mucking around on the Polyend Tracker or Play or Tracker Mini. So really, in the end, if you did like this one, definitely give it a thumbs up. It does tell the algorithm to point it to other people that are probably looking at how these synth engines work, and it'd be good to get in their hands. And if you do have any comments or queries, please feel free to leave them down below. I do try and go down there and explain the process of what's going on, or just give extra information to round out this video as well. So this is part of a series on the sample engines on this machine, or sound engines. So if you're looking for them, you know where they are, and I look forward to seeing you next time.